What is happening, ladies and gentlemen? Ty here from Ty Drives, and this is the 2023 Volkswagen Atlas Cross Sport with the V6 and the SE with technology trim level. Very nice looking Atlas Cross Sport for you guys to take a look at today. And throughout this video, we're going to take a look at all of the features this vehicle has to offer. We're going to start on the exterior and then make our way under the hood, discuss a couple of different power plants that the Cross Sport will come with. We'll then pop the trunk and see how much cargo space we are working with. And finally, we'll get a good look at the interior, starting with the rear seats and hopping on into the front seats. But at the end of the video, you're going to want to make sure you stay tuned, because I'm going to strap this GoPro to my head. I'm going to take a look at what it's like to drive the Atlas Cross Sport. Starting off with the features of the exterior, however, we have full LED headlights, both for your high and low beams. You also have LED daytime running lights up here too, with your turn signals down below. Down here we have some nice accents, both in a flat black, also in some silver, which is pretty nice. You also have parking sensors throughout the front bumper, and a pretty nice grille up here. Take a look up top. Very nice hood, very broad, large, sort of angular hood to this vehicle, and some pretty neat creases in there too. Very cool body lines on the Atlas. Ever since it came out, we had these really angular sort of wheel arches, and that line follows down towards the side. Pretty cool black painted wheels on this particular vehicle. I think it's about a $400 option to have your wheels painted black from the factory. Looks very nice on this vehicle. The wheels measure up at 20 inches and the tires measure up at 255/50. You also have some nice cladding going around the wheels and down the side to protect that nice metallic gray paintwork. You have the nice little Atlas Cross Sport chrome emblem on the side, and the metallic roof rails. Taking a look over here, we have the turn signals on the mirrors, as well as blind spot warning. And you also get the keyless go, or the smart key entry on all four of the door handles. So you see the little indentation here. Put your finger there, that'll lock the vehicle, and just put your hands behind the handle to unlock. And now back here is where we see that differentiation between the regular Atlas and the Cross Sport. You see the Cross Sport has a nice angular rear end to it, and that kind of cuts off the third row seats, and this is now a two-row vehicle, two rows of seating rather, and you get a really nice looking sporty SUV. Still almost as much room as the regular Atlas SUV. You know, you just chop off the third row seats. Back here, pretty much matching the front, you have full LED tail lamps. So yeah, the tail lamps, brake lights, and your turn signals are all LED. We have this nice long chrome strip that continues pretty much from the quarter panel all the way across the tailgate and to the other side. Very nice. We have parking sensors back here too, and some more chrome out back to kind of almost mimic an exhaust finisher. We also have the tow hitch back here, and the nice Atlas branding. And just below that, we have a little button here to release the trunk and the reverse camera. So, obviously a much better looking version of the Atlas. What do you guys think of the styling on this vehicle? Let me know in the comments. Alright, so popping the hood to the Atlas Cross Sport, we do have the latter of the two engine options, and that is a naturally aspirated 3.6 liter V6. Produces 276 horsepower and 266 pound-feet of torque. You can see it's nicely tucked in to the engine bay. Now you can also choose to get a turbocharged four-cylinder in the form of a 2-liter turbocharged four-cylinder. That produces 235 horsepower and 258 pound-feet of torque. So really not too far off on the torque figures as the larger V6, but it definitely gets quite a bit better fuel economy than this V6 will. And the performance isn't too far off. But taking a look in here, we have some nice seals around the engine to keep the motor noise out. And also lots of heat insulation and things going on. Just a very nice, tidy engine bay. Alright, so as you see, this Atlas will come standard with a powered liftgate, which is very nice because some Volkswagens, not naming names, will come with a powered trunk lid delete because of the chip shortage, but the Atlas is not affected by that. Just some other Volkswagen models are. Just to keep that in mind if you're in the market for a new Volkswagen SUV. But taking a look back here, look at the absolutely massive amount of storage space you have back here. Again, the Cross Sport eliminates that third row seat that the normal Atlas would have, and as a result you do get a little bit more of an angled trunk lid, but I believe it is just about as long as the Atlas, regular SUV, which means you just have an absolutely massive amount of storage back here. We have lighting, also some grocery bag hangers to either side. You also have cargo tie downs in all four corners of the trunk, and you can fold down the rear seats in a 60/40 fashion. 12-volt power outlet over here, and also some storage extensions to either side, and we can lift up the nice all-weather mat, and you can see that we have a spare tire back here. To close the trunk, if you choose to do it manually, they give you a nice handle, or you can just press the button. Alright, so taking a look at the rear cabin, we have a very large rear door for you to get in and out. Materials aren't too bad back here. We do have mostly hard to touch materials, but where your arm is going to rest is a nice leatherette, sort of contrast stitching, and a nice different color than the rest of the interior. You have a nice sort of lighter gray to lighten up the interior just a little bit, but lots of storage on the rear doors. You can see you have kind of like a shelf system, a smaller up here and a larger down here with a bottle holder, but you pretty much just have your window switch and the door handle back here. Take a look at these seats. Very neat sort of pattern for the seats. Most of the seats are covered in this leatherette material, but you also have this sort of carbon fiber mimicked cloth, I guess you could say, on the seat, which is pretty neat towards the edges. You also have these handles right here to fold down the seats back here. As you can see, they fold down completely flat, so that will even extend your cargo space even greater. And you also have a fold down armrest back here with a couple of cup holders. Completely black headliner, and a sunroof is available, although this one does not have it. And once you climb in the rear seats, you'll see that the Atlas Cross Sport is pretty massive in the back. So take a look at how much legroom I have back here. I am 5'10", and I made sure to adjust the front seat to a normal driving position for myself. And again, just take a look at how much room I have back here. And the Atlas in general is a pretty big vehicle, so you also have lots of room width-wise. Taking a look back here, we have two air vents, a little cubby hole right here. In upper models, you'll get your own sort of climate control where that cubby hole is. You have two USB chargers back here and a regular household outlet too back here. Now, since this Atlas is pretty high up off the ground, we really don't have much for a drivetrain hump, which means the hump is really only a couple of inches higher than the regular floor. So you can fit a third person pretty comfortably back here. We have lighting up top, which is all LED, and also grab handles for the rear passengers. And that pretty much does it for the rear cabin. Let's take a look at the front. Alright, so the front passengers are treated to a little bit nicer materials. So you have a nice soft to the touch up here where you're going to rest your elbows if you like to rest them high. Or again, down below is nice and soft too. And you also get this nice piece of trim right here. It almost sort of mimics a wood trim, but very nice looking for the front passengers. You have the door handle, lock, unlock, and we also have all of our window controls, the window lockout for the rear, and all of your power mirror adjustments. We also have a couple of speakers on the front door and the trunk release right there, and a pretty large little bit of storage there. On the left of the dash, we have a pretty large air vent and all of your lighting controls. Down below even more, you can see up here we have the release for the tilt telescoping steering wheel. And we also have a little cubby to put smaller items. And you also have the hood release, your pedals, and a nice little sill tray down below. And the driver's seat has that same leatherette and sort of a carbon fiber cloth material on the seat as well. And we have full power functions and two-way lumbar for the driver. Alright, so let's hop in and check out what else the driver's cockpit has to offer. Alrighty, so here is the key fob for the Atlas. You have some nice chrome accents at the top and at the bottom, and you have the lock, unlock, trunk release, and remote start button on the face of the key. And if you flip it over, you have the panic alarm on the side and a nice little Volkswagen emblem up top on the other side. You also have a little slider here to slide out the physical key in case you need to use that. But of course we do have push button ignition right next to the shifter. And we'll start off all the features of the cockpit with what's right in front of us. That is a very nice leather wrapped steering wheel with some contrast stitching. We have all of our adaptive cruise control settings over here. Also a volume adjuster, and to the other side, a skipping for different tracks or radio stations. We also have all the buttons up here to configure our digital display up there, as well as a voice commands button too. Behind the steering wheel, we have a couple of stalks, of course, for our turn signals and high beams. And over here for our front and rear wipers. But speaking of that display up here, we have a full digital instrument cluster up front, right in front of the driver. So again, we'll pay attention to these controls to configure the screen up here. Now we have a couple of different views where you can press that button right there, and it'll pretty much cycle between 3 different views you can get. And then we also have different sub-menus within the center of the gauges there, which you can see displays various different menus, such as your range for the fuel economy, and sort of like a trip overview for, you know, various things like your average speed, average miles per gallon, things like that. You can also scroll over to see various things in your assist systems, get the compass up here, or the navigation system if it's equipped with it up in the center screen, with what's going on with the radio, telephone, and kind of cycling back to the driving data. And again, press the view button, get different screens, and kind of your essentials will stay towards the bottom, and this one, your speed and what gear you're in. You can press the view one again and kind of get a good combination of your average miles per gallon, some trip information, whatever you choose in the center, such as, you know, cycling through the various information in the center, and then also your radio station up in the top right hand corner. So very nice digital gauges in this car. Take a look up here. We have a nice short dash. So Short dash means lots of interior space, but it is nice and soft to the touch with some stitching. You have a nice rubberized storage tray over here. And that brings me down to our main infotainment screen. Press the menu button, you kind of get a jumblation of all your different apps. And it is somewhat of a touchless touchscreen, I guess you could say, in the fact that you can kind of just swipe back and forth between various different menus, and it'll kind of just change without, you know, having to get fingerprints all over the screen and things like that. But we can go through a few different menus here within the screen, just so you know what they look like. You have your presets over here for the radio, and then your source down below. Then we have a manual tuning with a tune knob and volume knob over there. We have our phone navigation screen if it's equipped, and then also our assist system, so we can kind of turn on and off those systems within this screen and kind of adjust them too. We have our media, our app connect, which has to do with the Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Then we have various vehicle settings, which is more or less of a sort of trip computer. And then you can also go into the digital cockpit and kind of display you know, different displays within there. So if you press the view button, you kind of see when we're adjusting. We have two different views for things that show up within the inside of the gauge clusters. So that's pretty neat. And then you can also kind of adjust the way you want, which is really pretty neat. Now we have one more selection within the vehicle information, and that is the vehicle status. So if you have low tire pressure or anything like that, that'll come up in this screen here. We have our sound settings. Then to our right, we have all of the climate control within the screen. So the fan speed, the temperatures over here, and where you want the air to blow. And we also have our vehicle settings. You can pause the video to see what you can customize in here as well. That pretty much does it for this screen. We have various shortcuts to the side: radio, media, phone, you know, voice commands. The app button is for the Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, jump directly to it. Then you obviously have the menu button for your home screen. You also swipe from the top to do various things like your gauge dimming and your garage door openers and things like that. Taking a look down here, we have a very simple dual zone climate control, heated seats for both front people. We have our temperatures to either side and fan speed in the center, and kind of where you want the air to blow up top. Very simple climate control. Get the shifter out of the way so you can see some various buttons down here, such as your auto start stop and your hazards. Down here we also have a wireless charging pad for your phone and two USB-C inlets with a 12-volt outlet as well. And that brings me up here to our shifter, where we do have an 8-speed torque converter automatic transmission for both the 4-cylinder and 6 cylinders. So we put it down into reverse. See our parking sensors activate, and we also have a nice reversing camera. We have neutral drive, and then once you're in drive, you have, you know, just your normal drive like so. But we can also put the shifter down one bump, which put the transmission into kind of a sport mode, so kind of hold the gears. If you're going up a hill or you just want to drive sporty, you know, that'll be the setting for you. And you can also shift it manually down here if you'd like. Speaking of different modes, this car has quite a few. So we have this rotary here with a snow mode, sort of a normal driving mode, and then two different off-road modes. But while we're in the regular, you know, everyday mode, we have a couple of different sub modes. So we have eco, normal, sport, and a custom mode that you can adjust. Pretty neat. And you could also move it over to the snow mode. You get a pretty cool visual there. And also your off-road mode, which defaults into an automatic setting, but you can also customize that off-road mode as well. So lots of different things you could customize here in the off-road mode. And throughout our test drive, we're going to be cycling between normal and sport, you know, obviously for comfort reasons and for sporty driving reasons, for your viewing pleasure. We have the start-stop button for the engine, your electronic parking brake, and also a button here to activate our parking sensors and parking camera at any time. Two very large cup holders and a very large center console as well, with yet another USB-C charger. Very nice big center console. We have some more of that pretty cool looking trim over towards the passenger side, and the passenger also gets a lock-up glove box. Pretty good amount of space in there too, sort of a bin style. Very large sun visors on this car. Take a look at how big they are. They also house a mirror and light. Taking a look up here, we have our rear view mirror and LED illumination for the inside. We also have a very large sunglass storage. I'd say you could probably fit 2 or 3 sets of sunglasses in there, and some information, service, and SOS controls up here. So with all that being said, I think you get a pretty good idea on the features that this Atlas SE with technology has. Let's get it out on the road and see how it drives. All right, let's get this Atlas out on the road and see what it's like to drive. So, a little overview of this test drive. We'll first get it out onto a little dead end down the street here. So we'll test out the turning circle. So if any of you viewers are in the city often, or even live in the city, we'll see how easy maneuverable it is to get around. After that, we'll kind of get it out onto more of a main road where we can test out the kind of what it's like at higher speeds of 45, 50 miles an hour. See what it's like, road noise, wind noise wise, and finally we'll get it out onto the back road, and that'll be kind of like the main portion of the video. We'll get an acceleration clip as soon as we get onto the back road. That's a nice straight, almost a little bit of an incline, but good spot to test the acceleration. And most of the rest of that road is going to be just a kind of windy, twisty, bumpy road. So really get a good test and see how this Atlas is on the road. Pretty good turning circle too. Just keep in mind, this is a pretty big SUV. So handle that turning circle test very well. And again, in case you forgot, we are working with the V6 as opposed to the 2-liter turbo 4-cylinder. So we have a little bit extra horsepower, a little bit extra torque on board with the V6. Now, one thing you'll notice straight away with driving an Atlas is that I guess an Atlas with the V6, is that the throttle response is pretty sharp, which could be a good thing, but sometimes it'll catch you off guard. So if you kind of just put your foot down a little bit, especially on takeoff, it'll get you going pretty quick. Might even surprise you a little bit. So it's looking like, because of traffic, we might not make it up to 50 miles an hour, but I can tell you, at 40, maybe 45 miles an hour, it's pretty quiet in here. We have some pretty large mirrors, but there's not a whole lot of wind noise, a little bit of tire noise as you'd expect, but it does pretty good up at these speeds. So take a right onto this back road, and we're going to pop it into sport driving mode. Since we're going to get a little acceleration clip. So we're going to get the car up to 25 miles an hour and kind of punch the throttle, see what the transmission does, and also see how fast we can get up to speed. So we'll give these guys some room. And get it up to 25 here, and we'll punch it. So yeah, in addition to having plenty of power, we're working with 276 horsepower. This is a pretty big SUV, but it does carry the weight pretty good. So yeah, in addition to having enough power, this V6 also sounds really good. You know, it is basically the VR6 that every Volkswagen guy or girl knows to sound amazing, and even in the Atlas it sounds really good. So definitely a pretty cool advantage over the 4-cylinder, in addition to having more power, as it just sounds better. Now, I have driven the Atlas, a couple of different Atlases, you know, Cross Sport and the regular 3-row Atlas with the 2-liter 4-cylinder, 2-liter turbo 4-cylinder, I should say. Very impressed with that power plant. You know, in some respects, it almost feels just as potent as the V6. You can go over to my channel. Last year we filmed a 3-row Atlas with that 2-liter turbocharged 4, so if you're curious on how that drives, definitely check my channel. We filmed an SE 3-row Atlas with the 4-cylinder. Another huge advantage over the V6 is this, you know, V6 is kind of a gas guzzler. You know, it doesn't get the best fuel economy in its class, but if you do choose to get the 4-cylinder, then it gets pretty competitive with the fuel economy. You know, it gets a lot better fuel economy than the V6 will. Alright, so we'll kind of put it back into normal mode. Oh, looks like we have some road work going on here. Alright, so coming through the road work here, looks like they're filling some of the potholes, which this road desperately needed. Love some of the faces that people give me if they see me wearing a camera on my head. This never gets old. But this is pretty much the bumpiest section of the road coming up here. So definitely really get a good feel for the suspension. Yeah, and the Atlas seems to ride pretty darn good over these bumps. Even though they're filling all these imperfections in the road, it's still pretty bumpy, which is good for us because we get a, you know, good feel on the suspension still. There are some bumps here that I would not take any cars with any small sidewall on a tire down, but the Atlas handles these bumps like a champ. You know, it's a pretty comfortable suspension on this Atlas. And you know, having driven a few Atlases on the highway, both with the 4-cylinder and the V6, that is really where this car shines. You know, the highway, this just eats up the miles on the highway. It's so comfortable. It's got plenty of power. You know, on the highway, it's just a great highway cruiser. So if you like to take road trips or have a long commute for work every day, which involves faster paced driving, you know, this Atlas is a really, really good choice. The seats are also pretty comfortable. I believe they got rid of the most basic S trim level on the Atlas last year. So the most basic trim you can get is the SE, which comes with leatherette seats, pretty much the same seat as this car has. So that leaves us with two seating options. Obviously the leatherette one, like I just mentioned, and a genuine leather seat. I always found the seats in the with the genuine leather to be just a tad more comfortable. I don't know if there's more give in the leather rather than the leatherette, but definitely a little bit more comfortable. And that seat also comes with memory. You know, they get that seat on the SEL Premium, which is the top of the line trim. But these seats with the front cushion adjustment that kind of goes up and down, and the also the two-way lumbar, make for a pretty comfortable seat as well. One thing I do have to point out for those of you who have driven a regular 3-row Atlas, this has quite the smaller view out of the rear view mirror here. So since we have that pretty cool, like, you know, fastback shape, it kind of robs a little bit of visibility in the rear, although it's not unbearable. It just hinders it a little bit. So yeah, again, just a really good sounding V6. Alright, so that pretty much does it for the features and a test drive on the 2023 Volkswagen Atlas Cross Sport V6 SE with technology. That's quite the name for a car, to be honest. But it is also quite the car. You know, very nice amount of features with this sort of mid-level trim, and a pretty good price tag too. Lots of features. You know, you have the full digital display up here, which is nice, and an overall pretty good driving experience, you know, especially on the back roads, and even more especially so on the highway. So I hope you have enjoyed the Atlas Cross Sport just as much as I have. I also hope you stay right here with us on Tide Drives for more videos just like this one.